remember how love behaves, does not keep account of the injury, does not rejoice over unrighteousness.
What's the heaviest thing you've ever carried? Maybe you helped move a large piece of furniture or something like a piano. Years ago, I helped move a large fireproof safe. That was heavy. Now, when you're carrying something that's so heavy you can barely keep it off the ground, isn't it a relief when you can finally just put it down? For some, the heaviest thing they ever carried is an accounting of how others have injured them. They bear the heavy weight of holding a grudge or resentment over wrongs. In the next few minutes, we're going to talk about two Bible principles in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 that can help us in these challenging situations. The first is found in verse 5. Love does not keep account of the injury. The greatest example of this is our Heavenly Father, Jehovah. Despite all of the mistakes that we make, Jehovah looks for a reason to forgive. Anytime there's a sound reason, he forgives. And once he's forgiven, he never picks those sins back up to hold against us. A loving person imitates Jehovah. Even when they have justification to be upset over a wrong, they do not continue to carry it with them. They don't hold on to that account of injury. They put it down and they leave it in the past. As you watch the following video, consider how David imitated Jehovah's loving example.
The Amalekites kidnapped the wives and children of David and his men. And his men became very bitter.
Our families were never safe here.
You led them to their death! Life for life, David! You should be stoned!
Patience, please. Jehovah may have rescued them. We don't know.
David looked to Jehovah for help. David fought the Amalekites, rescued all of the kidnapped Israelites, and recovered all of the flocks that had been taken.
Jehovah protected us and gave into our hand the marauder band that came against us.
David could have given the spoils of war only to those who trusted in him, but he shared with all. It was as though they had never wronged him.
How can we imitate David's good example of forgiveness? The Bible account tells us he was distressed. His men were so upset at him that they were literally speaking of murdering David. Did he lash out at them? Did he punish them? No, it tells us he went to Jehovah and prayed for guidance. And afterward, he treated everyone well. When we're carrying the heavy burden of resentment, if we're keeping track to the account of injury, do we try to apply those principles? Have we really thought about the consequences of whether we choose to hold on to resentment, that account of injury, or if we choose just to put it down? The consequences are spelled out for us in Matthew chapter 6. Please turn there with me. Matthew chapter 6 and verses 14 and 15. And there it reads, starting in verse 14, "For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Whereas if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. If we don't forgive others, Jehovah will not forgive us. If we're bearing the heavy burden of account of injury, of resentment or a grudge, that should be a sobering thought for us. If we're struggling with that, if we're keeping account of what others have done, there's something else we need to keep in mind. Forgiving them doesn't mean we condone the wrong. It doesn't mean the wrong wasn't real. It doesn't mean we continue to allow others to take unfair advantage of us. It simply means we put down our resentment. We leave it in the past. What can help us to keep from having this account of injury constantly in our mind? A sincere prayer on behalf of someone who's injured us may help. It helped David. At the end of Job's trials, before Jehovah would forgive Job, he required Job to pray for those who had injured him. Could we say a prayer on behalf of those who have offended us? Could we beg Jehovah to bless that person, to help us forgive? That could mean the difference when Jehovah is looking at us and seeing if there's a sound reason to forgive us. Let's talk about that second principle. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 6, it says that love does not rejoice over unrighteousness. One way that we apply this is by staying away from entertainment that features things that Jehovah condemns. We refuse to be entertained by unrighteous immorality or by violence. We know Jehovah hates those things. We seek out entertainment that truly refreshes, even though we know that at times we're going to have to take more effort. We may have to spend time to find and plan for that type of entertainment. It also means we don't rejoice when bad things happen to others, even others who may have hurt us in the past. There's likely to be times where we see someone suffer the consequence of their sin or their poor choices. A loving person will never say, good, they deserved it. They got what was coming to them. No, if we love Jehovah, we will not rejoice over unrighteousness. Instead, watch the following video. Note how David reacted to the news of Saul's death.
I've escaped from the camp of Israel. Many have fallen and died. Even Saul and his son Jonathan died.
How do you know?
I stood above him and put him to death.
Teach all of my people this dirge for Saul and Jonathan. Saul and Jonathan, they loved and cherished during their life. How the mighty have fallen. And the weapons of war have perished.
Not once did David mention Saul's hurtful acts. To David, the assassination of Saul was an unrighteous act, and David could never rejoice over that.
Did you notice David's compassion? Saul had spent most of the last several years trying to kill David. He had forced him to live as a fugitive. We could say that he did almost everything he could to make Saul or David's life miserable. Had David kept account of that? Did it cause him to rejoice over the unrighteousness surrounding Saul's death? Absolutely not. The Amalekite likely thought he'd get David's favor if he brought that news to David, and he even twisted it to say that he had been the one that had killed Saul. Little did he know that David worked to imitate his God Jehovah and would not rejoice over such unrighteousness. Years later, David's son Solomon reflected this thinking in Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 17. Please read that with me. Proverbs chapter 24, and in verse 17 it instructs us, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice. And when he stumbles, do not let your heart be joyful. David did not rejoice when Saul died. He wasn't joyful. Instead, he was moved to write a mournful song in Saul's memory, speaking positively of him. He had put down that account of injury. He did not rejoice in unrighteousness. If we are carrying the heavy burden of resentment, the account of injury, put it down. Work to imitate David. Never rejoice over unrighteousness. Brother Chuck Casper Jr. from the Lockport congregation will now consider the next part of the symposium. Remember how love behaves, rejoices with the truth, bears all things.